Okay, I think this is pretty much everybody. So whenever we're ready, we can get started. Okay, so I'll just do an announcement really quickly, and then I'll turn the time over to Ken and Susie for some training. We just wanted to remind everyone as we're going into the summer months of the dress code for teachers. So our dress code is pretty relaxed, right? You don't have to show up in like slacks and a tie and whatever, but sandals are okay for the summer. Shorter pants are okay. We'd like you to stay away from shorts specifically, but like capris are fine. Just make sure that they're not like full of holes or, you know, super dirty, like you've just come in from the yard or something. There is still a level of professionalism that we want to keep. I've also just want to warn people that like things like leggings are okay if they look professional. If they're like tie-dyed and it looks like you've just come from working out, let's try and stay away from that too. So just professional. Relaxed but professional, okay? That's all I had to say. Just a reminder as we get into the warmer months. So, we're turning over to Susie first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna turn the time over to Susie.
Here or over there?
Well, you're the boss for this, so you do what you want.
So
But more people will see you up front and besides the
Yes.
recording. So I'll get out of your way.
that's good.
We'll just trade seats for a minute. I'll answer your phone.
So during last block, the last block that we had, I was paying attention on the writing class. All of you guys have a writing class. So I was wondering why those students don't have fun writing. I was struggling make them writing, paying attention, or getting that energy for writing. They like elective, but they don't like writing. So I was reading, I did a lot of research trying to understand, to find information. And that was for me. And then I found a couple of research, and one of them explained that when somebody comes from a different country, their culture is what stopped them, the writing, passing from Spanish or other countries' language to the English language writing, which is a little different. The way how we write in our countries has a different format than the way how we write here in the United States. I think the United States writing is easy because you just have a format, follow that, and do it. But they don't get that, and they try to do it their way. So I wanted to figure out how can I break this ice between the writing so they can improve. Another study indicated that writing goes together with reading. If they read and understand or are familiar with different words, new words that they are not familiar with, it's easier for them to put it on words and writing. What I found out is they struggle putting words together in a paper because they don't know how to explain what they have it in their mind. What will this word be in English? They know in Spanish, but they don't know in English. So that's why they put it together, both the reading and writing. The more you read, your vocabulary increases, so that can be put in paper. So I was wondering if you guys can help me with this. I would like to put together, like you guys in groups, the 2000 generation teachers, and below the 2000, I want to put together the experience, those who taught for many years and those who are learning about teaching, taking classes, going to school about this degree. I would like to get ideas on how would you approach, or what do you do to approach your writing class here at Nomen Global? And maybe we can share those ideas, and maybe it will help us to improve that writing part of Nomen Global. Yes, agree, disagree? I know we only have two, Annette and...
If you're doing 2000 as the mark, I think actually a few of us were born in the late 90s, so we technically count below that line.
So how come, I want to put the ones who had more experience and the ones who are getting that experience.
not my.
So
Does
how
that
about
make sense?
years of teaching?
Years of teaching, there you go.
And leave us old ladies not in our own category. Thank you.
So maybe I can put you, Kaylee, if you wanna come to this group here. And let's see if we can leave you two, and actually you have an experience also, right?
Yeah, I can come
Teaching
I can
here.
come with her.
And you can help me
Ken,
with that.
get over here. Brainstorm and share with
Join
us,
this group.
share with us, what do you do in your class, or
Yes.
what tools do you use
No, you don't have to be liars.
to help you with writing? I have pens, I will give you guys some pens.
oh, good.
Okay, I'm the math teacher, so I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be doing
Oh, this is scratch paper. right?
scratch paper.
What am I
We are
signing? Oh, let's do it.
recycling.
But
You
I
are
did get
signing
a,
your name there.
but I did get a 5.5 out of
Thank
6 on the
Thank
GRE or
you.
GMAT in writing.
So I will give you about, what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? 5 minutes to brainstorm. Share what you guys do in class, or what do you think it works, it can work, or it works for you during your, do you have it?
Yeah.
Doing your writing class. Or maybe if you never taught writing, what helped you when you were in school?
Okay, I'll start, that's okay, because with assuming it's been really difficult.
I found
Not difficult, but.
In high school,
More
I had a
challenge.
really good AP
So I
English
have
teacher,
turned all
and he
of my
kind of
writing
taught me
exercises
like a formulaic
into
way
a
to look at
speaking
writing.
exercise,
How to just think of every essay as the
into
same, but you're just
a
plugging in
writing
different
exercise,
information
and I
in
have
each
them
essay.
always
And
read
so in writing class, I try to
if
make
it's
it like,
an essay,
I
if
just try to
it's
show
a
them that they can
paragraph.
have the same
So I try
structure to
be
every essay.
more,
And the only difference
because
is
my big
filling in
problem
the
with
details.
specifically
you
is
know,
I didn't
You've
feel
got your 5
the
paragraph
interaction
structure,
as
but then
much.
also showing them
And
each
so I
paragraph, your first
decided-
sentence should be this,
I noticed in
then
writing
2, 3,
class it
4
was just
is
kind
this
of
is
that
what you do in these sentences,
silent
and then the
space,
last
you know, a
sentence,
little
you get it
bit.
ready for the next one.
So I
And that
decided
way,
for me,
instead of feeling
I
like they just have to
wanted
write a big
integrate-
massive
I
text,
wanted to
they know that
integrate
each
it a
sentence
little
has a
bit more.
purpose, and they
then
understand
that way
that
we could
purpose, and they can just
discuss.
plug in the information.
Because if whatever
Yeah, and then
topic
there's
we
the
were
pyramid
talking about, say,
principle.
okay,
You
you could
tell
discuss that.
what you're going to say.
Maybe
and
this one is a
say
little
it,
bit
and say
outside
what you
the-
said.
Mhm.
What we're talking about.
I took
Because
a lot of
I
different
noticed a lot of them
courses
as
in
they
my
start
life.
talking that,
I just put
Their
them
minds
together,
are
and
going
when
in a
I
completely
type something,
different
I
place.
just go
and
fast.
so I say, okay,
I
that's,
use every
you know,
single thing that I
but
learned.
that's what I've had
right
to do.
away
I feel
is
like-
really convenient.
So what you're saying is.
That's, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a writing assignment.
That's about all I have to
So
say.
you're gonna
I feel like
integrate the speaking or some other
hold on,
type.
yeah, talk about, you're in our group. This
Just the end group.
is,
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I made you feel
Yeah. We're special.
You guys are.
I'm just like, I'm in the in group?
Has it really well, I think sometimes you
Can you, I barely,
Can you figure out the
going on with
each
the
by,
So that's usually what I try
This is
to
the-
help the students recognize.
Is that how they work?
no, years of experience in teaching, so I know this, but.
yeah, but my.
Well, we're talking about how to
Yeah.
How do you engage?
students in writing classes.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to like really
'Cause
point
it's
out
hard, right?
why the curriculum is that way, and how it can actually just
Well, I
pretty
think
much guide them
discussion
right to where
is
they need to be.
important.
Yeah.
Because if they're,
Something that's always helped me
Because
in
a
writing
lot of
is
them
being
just
really
go-
interested
they're just
in
blank
what
and
I'm
say,
writing
well,
about. And
okay,
I think
I'll
so if we
start
can help
throwing
the
out some
students to make sure
questions
they're
to kind of
interested
get
in
them
the topic,
to
like
focus a
we
bit,
choose
because
the
that's the
topic,
biggest problem, I think.
make sure it's
with
interesting,
writing,
and
the students
if we
just-
aren't
their
choosing the
minds just
topic,
go,
we should,
you know?
we could even, I think it'd be
So,
valuable to even like spend a few minutes
Especially with
writing
slower.
doesn't
trying to
happen
get the
back to
students
back.
excited
No.
about what they're writing about.
You know?
They often
because I
don't
think that's
understand
worthwhile.
it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
You
write
have
my
to, like the
blog
level
posts.
1 and 2 and 3.
I have 3
You
different
have to
topics that I
explain,
go through.
explain, explain.
And one of them that they
paragraph
actually let me
form.
do here is
so many little
movies I've
things,
seen
but
and
they
how
should
they
know
help
by
me teach
level
math
5 or
and
6,
global,
but obviously some
and
people
global.
don't.
Yeah.
And I've done the movie
Depends on
Pi
the
and
owner
I've
of the
done the movie
program.
Stand
It
Over
does.
so far.
I have found when I've
Those are
been
pretty
teaching
old
at other
movies.
schools
I
where
have
it's
a lot
like a
of math
dedicated
movies I've
reading and
seen
writing
make
class,
pop.
like half the time you're doing
Yeah,
reading.
and that's what's good, I think,
It's really
generating their
helpful to
interest.
talk about how English writing is
Also,
different
like,
than other languages.
The curriculum is set up where they do
English
have
is
like
super
specific
linear,
prompts, but
right?
it's
like
okay as a
very
teacher to
A,
get a
B,
little
C,
bit
D.
more
And in other languages, it's much
flexible.
more like
Like, say
Yeah.
this is what the prompt is,
Counter-arguments,
but if you'd
side
rather
things,
write a little
circular,
bit more
whatever.
about
So
this,
I
like
like
change the
to
prompt
talk
just a
about
little
the
bit,
different
I don't think
kind
that's a
of
bad
language
thing.
families and how they
As long as
typically
it
write.
accomplishes
And
the
so
same
students can see how
objectives
English
of
is
the course.
different. I also like to let
Sometimes
students
it's
know
just
that
like,
it's
this is
okay
what I
if
would
they
write
feel like
about,
they're
like,
being
this is what
repetitive.
interests me.
Because in a
And
short
show
English
them, like,
essay
an
where they're like
example.
giving us a thesis and
I
then each of
think
the
that
topic
can, like,
statements
get
and
them
then
thinking about,
restating that
like,
thesis and
you
then
don't have to
one
just, like, choose
paper,
a
they
boring
feel like they're
topic.
just saying the same
You
thing over
choose
and
the
over.
topic you like.
So I think letting them know that that redundancy is.
I try to do that and I also
Yeah.
try to
Writing
make
form,
the
that's
outline with them
important.
of what I would write, so that they can see,
I
and
also
then
have
I
tried
leave
to
that on the
make
board,
writing
so as they're
paragraphs
writing,
really
they can look and make the outline.
'Cause
I
that
show them
seems
like,
to be
you can
so
make an
hard.
outline in
Supporting
5
details
minutes,
seems to be, like,
if you just
impossible.
have this structure.
Well,
This
yeah,
is
also-
how I do my intro paragraph, I write my thesis out at the beginning and then
we
I
have
can just
levels
make
one,
all the
two,
other
three,
paragraphs ready to go.
Lower levels.
I found a lot of difficulties with learning how to write was
Within that
not really
category,
knowing what was
not a
expected,
level
so I
six.
really
For
think
example,
that's wise,
A
like,
level
if you
one
can show an
paragraph
example.
is gonna be 7, maybe 4 related
One more minute.
sentences. There's not gonna
A
be.
certain
connectors
degree of it
in
is gonna
between.
come down to
There's not
like
gonna be
actually proofreading their
that kind of
essays
stuff going
before.
on.
Because
They're just.
Yeah.
there's sometimes like,
When
they're
we
just
spend
grammar
more
things
out
that they're not
of
gonna
than
know,
that,
or that they're gonna mess up on, and so it's good, I think, to just go through. It can only be a few minutes. I like to go through if they are willing to show me their paper before they turn it in, which means they actually had to write it ahead of time. They usually are appreciative that I can go and be like, oh, you said this, but we actually, those words are just a little bit of a wrong order, put them like this.
Yes,
Mom.
I just write that
I
pattern.
think it helps to have them
Which
also
is that,
read
you know,
what
the
they
exercises are set up like
read
that,
what they've
so
written
we do a
out
lot of
loud,
stuff that we do a
so that
lot.
way they can.
I do my own
feel that
example.
flow.
I think that's
Kind of
why
And
it's
I
in
write
the
it right in front of them.
drawing their
Right.
attention to the different pieces so that they can see that, I think that's huge.
Do you guys
Yeah,
have a
another
hard time
thought
getting
occurred
them
to
to
me.
do like peer reviews? Like,
Yes.
put them
If they
into
have a
breakout
real
rooms and then they're like,
reason.
I like go to like check on them and it's like,
Not-
nothing happens.
Okay,
I'm like,
write
you
a
guys hear me
description
out?
of the,
Yeah.
I guess, is
town
there
that
like
you're
any tips for that? Like,
does anybody ever come up with an?
I remind
Put a
them, I'm
description
like,
of
come
town
on, they
together.
prepared.
I know
That's one of the
that.
assignments.
But yes, but
That's the hard
that's the way it is in the assignment, but you can always say.
Oh,
Well, it's
yeah.
in person, and
You're
if there's no like
reporting
graded
for
assignment
a
with it,
metropolitan newspaper.
then they usually don't do it, I find.
And
Oh,
that
that
was
makes
the,
sense.
Like if there's no
Is that a written
grade
prompt?
incentive
that's,
to have a peer
it's,
review.
it's the beginning
They
of
probably
Superman,
prepare.
Huh.
TV
I
series
would
in
consider
1950s.
participation grading. I mean,
Sometimes
that's
I attach it
You're
to
okay with people still
attendance.
talking, then that's fine.
Like
That's
if
what
they
I'm
come
doing.
and they don't have their
Yeah, if it's
paper
being
or they
productive,
don't
let's
participate
let
at
it.
all,
But if you.
or like
if you
I
say,
call
"Oh,
them and they're like, oh, I didn't do that well. But
Yeah,
then
ask you to tell
I say, okay,
about
and then I,
your neighborhood.
it's kind of savage, but I show on the screen the attendance and I
Which you just
read
No,
it.
no, I think that's good, and I think
I know it's all,
overall,
it's just like,
that seems to be one of the
my
bigger
paragraph,
issues we have,
three
so like,
paragraphs or
stuff
whatever
like
it
that
is.
sounds like a good idea.
And then usually they'll message me in the chat, they'll be like, teacher, I'm so sorry, I'll work on my, okay,
Three different
I'll
places in
put your
the
attendance back if you do the
Something
next
that gives it a
activity.
little bit more than,
Just
you
me.
know, it's like.
What about
It's
you,
like a lot of times, and this is-
Francine, what do you think about
it's
writing? Because you come from an engineering major with teaching writing, what do you think?
You guys can.
Yeah.
How
my
it's
school,
for the teacher meeting.
or for
Um,
my point of view.
Yeah, you're point of view, you want to
So you
share.
can walk into it, you can just join this group,
Most of
we're
the
just
time
talking
for
about
me,
teaching
it
writing.
was
Grammar
not
class.
easy to
Not this group.
Make me
write,
sentence negative.
Spanish.
Make me sentence negative.
But I know I am also student here.
Says,
I started in
Uh,
grade 4.
look, I'd like you to do this, make your sentence
That
negative.
was the most
You
difficult
know,
part
like
for me.
you're talking to your daughter, clean your room,
Because
make your sentence negative.
I was
Or make your
trying
response
to
negative.
It's hard to just like do that at a drop of a hat, I found myself as a teacher where it's like, and I understand why you're doing that to practice the form, but sometimes I'm like, this idea,
That's why
never
the
say it this
communicative-
way, it's hard to.
That's why the communicative practice is important.
Yeah.
You know, you
arrange,
get from
structure
very
all the
controlled where,
words.
yes, make your
And I
sentence.
think I am
But so it's the
teaching
same thing with
level
our
one,
writing.
and I know
We have
that
to go
for
through the
them,
parts,
it's so
but when we get to that whole thing,
So they,
in my opinion, yeah,
are
speaking
trying
like
to
you guys are talking about,
start with
talking
a
about
little,
it, even reading about something,
sentence,
something
a
that gives
little
some input,
structure,
an idea,
sometimes
modeling.
they don't
like,
understand and they
this
are
is
waiting.
this is something I wrote
Just, not for a
about
meeting.
what we're going to be writing about.
Students, want to.
But if we
hear,
can give them context other than
Translate.
write this
How is that
essay.
word in Spanish?
You can think of something they all relate to.
Yes.
That way
And then
it'd be
say, okay, let's
difficult
do
to
our
try to
hook about it.
write
Let's do some
something
background
in
information, and then
English,
everybody comes
but
up with
they
their
are
topic.
translating
And then
from
you just
Spanish,
keep going,
you know?
write it all out
Kind
together.
of-
I am,
I think-
I am fighting with
I
that,
think that's
but
important too, where like,
we
often
are
I'll tell my
better.
students, you can write about whatever you want,
Uh-huh.
and that's like
Yeah,
overwhelming
it's
to
definitely a lot
students, they're
different,
like,
like writing in a language that's not
hundreds
your
and
native
thousands of
language.
choices, like,
Yeah.
no, I need you to give me like a list, so I think sometimes narrowing down those choices or picking something
And
to
we
kind
are
of relate to is really
meeting
helpful.
together.
It kind of
Because
relieves
I have
that
that
stress
problem
of
that
the
some
topic, and they can
students
just focus on
online,
the
I-
structure.
And if they have an example in the, on
So
the
we
Canvas
are reading together,
that shows,
and after
because
that,
I've noticed
at
a
the
couple
end,
of times,
I start to
it
ask
has
for
the-
them,
the
what
outline,
is text about?
but
What do you
they
think?
need to have make sure there's an example that they
Mhm.
can maybe an
Yeah,
example
works
that
for
also identifies,
Yeah, it's a good
you know,
idea.
this is the hooker, this is the introduction, this is the body, cause at every,
It's hard at low levels
at
too,
every level it's different,
because
right?
like they're working on
Because
just getting
They
sentences,
don't even have
if
to
you're
right?
level
do it.
And
five,
then now
you've
you're
got
asking them to like write paragraphs or even
Yes.
small essays.
Level one is pretty.
It's challenging to like,
But
I just know like
agree
whenever
with
I
what you
tried
said,
writing
like,
in,
think one
I
of the things
did
about
Japanese language,
talking
but
about
I
it
tried
is
writing
it
essays from like my
focuses
Japanese
their
classes.
attention
And I can
on
get
what
the
they can
sentences, but I
write
get
out,
really
so
tired,
to get
because
some
it's just a
ideas,
lot of
'cause a lot of
focus
their
for a
anxiety
long
comes
time.
from if
Starting.
they-
So
if they
I
feel
try to
like
be
the
aware of that
topic
when
is
they're
so
writing.
big, and then as you
That it
talk
can be really
about it,
tiring to like
so their
have to
mind
think
says, oh,
for
okay, I can talk
so
about
long and so
it.
like
And
focused
I'm very,
on the writing.
you know, I just.
Especially in those lower levels where
We're
they're
gonna
like
talk
still
about
grasping
this,
for some
and then
vocabulary
let's talk
terms,
about
like they might
two
know
or
what they
three
want to
things,
say, but
right?
they don't have the English
The
word for it.
concept
Yeah.
of focusing on those things and not going all over the
I
place.
have
which is the
students
biggest
that they
problem, right?
write it in
Their-
Spanglish.
their
Oh,
ideas
yeah.
are everywhere.
At least they are
But saying,
trying,
okay,
but then I'm like,
talking about
Google
your
it now that
town.
you know in
What are you gonna be
Spanglish,
talking
you
about?
know, things like that,
Yeah.
that
Talking
you
about
have to make it very
education or
fun
great
also.
restaurants.
Don't
or-
just say, no, it's
or,
wrong.
You know, this, they're
Try
tourist
to have
industry
fun
or
with
what-
them and
whatever.
help them, especially
Because
if they don't
otherwise
know
they're
what
gonna
word
be all
they're
over
Yeah.
the place. And
talking about.
focusing, I
Yeah,
think.
I'm always like, I mean, if you know the word in Spanish, you can find a translator.
Just staying.
Yeah, I've always felt like
For
students don't do that
vocabulary.
as much as I
Produces
would.
better-
Like whenever I heard a word, like a new word, and I was like, oh, that's useful, I always wrote it down.
They get
So that I can
overwhelmed,
study
that's a
it.
big
They
So
thing.
maybe like teaching
Right.
students how to do
Right.
better vocabulary study,
Write about
how to
anything you
actually
like.
like,
Right.
if they hear a
Even
new
if
word or
there's
learn
a
a new
general
word, they're probably
topic.
not gonna remember it if they don't write it
Write
down
about
and
your
study it.
hometown, like you said.
Just be like, hey,
There's
if
still
you
so
let's
many
learn a new
topics.
word in class today, have a notebook,
I was
and just
thinking
write down that word
categories.
every
I
time.
was gonna say level
And then
6
later
has
you
some
can put it
activities
in
that
your
teach
notes and
students
stuff.
to narrow topics really
Yeah.
well. And that I really like where they think, what is the instruction page say? Something like,
Maybe.
how many pages do you think it would take to write everything there is to know about the planet Earth? And they're like, oh, billions, and then how many pages would it take to write about New York City? And then, okay, less, but still a ton, okay, what about one borough of New York City, one restaurant, one whatever, like, yeah, going at much more. And so like, you don't have to necessarily have that activity, but be able to give students that mental scaffolding, like to funnel those ideas, I think
And
is really
looking
important.
for the reading that.
I was gonna mention too, that level 6 does
You are
writing
interested.
most of their final projects, but I think there's two oral final projects, the rest
So,
are.
Kylie, you
writing,
teach level
and so we
6,
do a
right?
lot of writing at level 6.
What do you think about their writing?
But I
What do you
find
do,
that
help
the biggest
them,
thing is
how do
like,
you help
actually
them?
for its structure is not.
I honestly don't feel like I have a problem
It's
with
the
that
writing
voluntary,
struggle,
which is kind of
dealing
interesting.
with that, the pattern.
I did have a question
And
though,
how,
like, how
and
do
the
you
other
guys
thing is,
grade
how does that,
writing?
what they're doing in the
Cause
translate
you can't fix
into
every single like
reality?
little grammar mistake, right?
Like in,
In the end, and
integrated
like
skills
the
one,
grammar
you have
Nazi
to
and you kind of
describe their, their neighborhood.
Most of the
in
writing
terms
has
of
rubrics, so
locations
if you
of
just
three
kind of like
different
follow the
buildings,
rubric,
okay?
that's usually
Well,
fine. It's also
in real
hard because
life,
like if you have a lot of students,
They might be
I do
asked,
more of a quick read through.
where can
And
I
I don't,
find such
I
and
also,
such?
you know,
And
want
they
to
can
fix all the
tell,
grammar mistakes,
or
but I'm more looking at
they
What
would
was
be
the
asking,
objective
where
of this
can I
assignment,
find
and did
the
they
bank? Where's
understand
the
it,
bank?
succeed?
And they
So
can
like looking
follow
at the
the
course
instructions
objectives
because
and
they
then the
know
rubric to
the-
kind of see what were they supposed
The
to be able to
structure
do
of
with
the
this,
structure
and how well did they do
because
it?
of the writing, and they
I
probably
feel like
talked
it's
about
hard to
it
grade
some
them
way.
if, like, for
in a speaking
example, we've
assignment
been
or
talking
whatever.
about like all week
But-
that,
so you can-
okay, it's not a
you can actually
persuasive
give
essay, it's
directions
an
to something,
informative
so you
essay,
can
and then I still
understand
get
when you
like
ask
several
someone.
persuasive essays, and I'm like, they
And
like
you
did a
can
lot
not
of
be
work
afraid to
on
ask
it.
someone.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
kind
give
of
them
tough.
like
So
a lot
if we
of
can relate it
points
in
still
some-
because
Yeah,
they
making
like
it
wrote
real
an
and
essay.
applicable is helpful.
I like what.
I'm a bit generous
Susie
too,
said too about
like,
the-
I give quite a bit for just
the
doing it,
connection.
participation,
Because I
if
found
I
it,
can tell they
like,
tried.
I feel like using the comment
Ones
section,
that
I'm like,
readers
you know, not necessarily marking them down, but like explaining
Instead of
Yeah.
getting all of
those
that sentence
ideas.
structure
Like,
input,
like,
yeah.
oh, like there were some errors here, but that was, I'm not focusing on that. Like, good
As
job
far as
here.
structure goes for the upper
And
levels,
maybe
I
this was
found
more
that this is
persuasive
really
than
helpful.
like this
So
assignment
this
wanted
is what
it to be.
I give them a
but,
worksheet
like,
that has this 3
you
times,
know,
one for
you
each
did
of their
good
body
effort.
paragraphs. So they write their topic sentence down,
Like,
and
not
then
always
I asked
marking
them to
down,
ask 3
but, like,
questions about this
definitely
topic sentence, which
commenting
kind of
on it so
become
that
like
they
the
know
major supporting
how to
ideas in the paragraph. And then if they answer that question, then they're already at like 6
I was like, this
sentences
is not a
in the
persuasive
paragraph,
essay.
and
I told
then
them
transitioning
every
between
single
those
day.
ideas, that gets
And then
a
they
full
turn in
paragraph.
questions. I was like,
And
That's what
I
I'm like,
present this to them and then I
remember,
model it, like
like,
even
even on the
okay, someone give me,
PowerPoint.
we're working with the topic, whatever,
Okay.
and then I'll say, give me an idea.
Yeah, I
And
usually,
we'll write that as a
I
topic
might take
sentence,
like
and
2
then I'll
points
ask
off
them
and
for
just say,
questions, and then,
good
in
essay,
5
but I
minutes,
took
we've got
2
like a
points off
fully,
because it's the wrong
pretty
kind of
decently
essay.
built out paragraph, and I think breaking it down into really digestible chunks is helpful for them, because it is different than other
Sorry guys,
languages.
I was late.
I found
My
that
name
the
is
students who
Paula.
follow this, they write good
Um,
paragraphs. The
teacher
students who
or
have
the
often
level
be
0
confused,
or new students.
confused
New
about this.
students,
So you have to like
College
explain it
students.
and like really
So,
model it for them to
most of the
understand, but I
time
feel
I
like
have to teach
if someone had done this
just
for me
about
in
the
my L2, like shown me like a
system,
step-by-step
Canvas,
structure of
how
the
would we
language, cause they never did. They were like,
tasks,
write in Italian,
assignments,
and I was like,
everything.
okay. So I wrote
But
English structure
I'm
with
still
Italian
trying
words,
to,
and it drove
it's so
professors
interesting
crazy, cause that's not how you write
to
it.
hear about it.
They were never
Sorry.
teaching us how to write Italian, right?
What's your,
So I
what's
think
your perspective on
it's much more like
writing?
Spanish, where you start with an idea, then you look at
It's-
this
it's-
example, and then this
it's-
example, and it's much more
it's-
back and forth around the main idea, not so linear.
I cannot rate
Well,
this
it's not necessarily
level
that, it's more
because
just
they
like looking at
may
all of the
know,
angles
they
of the topic, and so
may
that if you
know
write in an English manner,
But for
it's
example,
very,
yesterday I had a student.
it seems like straightforward, like you're only, it
She
almost
doesn't
seems
know
biased, like you're only
at all.
looking at one perspective
She
of the
does. She
issue.
don't know even
Which
how
to
to
an
say
American writer,
temperature.
That's normal, that's
basic
fine,
things
but
that
to
we
a
learn
Latin-based
here.
writer,
Yeah.
especially an
Kids
Italian writer,
usually
like,
write even in
you're
school.
ignoring all these other ideas.
basically.
I didn't
So,
know, they weren't teaching me how to write
Got
that way.
stressed and she couldn't
Well, I think we
also
also have
manage
to be
Canvas.
conscious of the fact
I don't
that
know,
our
it's my-
students
my
come
short
from
experience
different
teaching.
educational backgrounds and
But I
different
just told her,
skills. I
just
have
keep
some,
on,
I have
we're
some
going
students in my
step
class
by
who
step,
can
it's
run
okay,
circles
if you
around
fail,
everyone, and
just
some
try.
who can barely
If-
pop out.
There's always those.
I will
and
spell
so,
for you some
constant
words, if you fail,
organization
it's okay, we are
and how you
trying,
do
that's,
it in English is really
I'm
important,
just
but
encouraging
they know,
them.
when you
I think
verbalize
you
it
do
with
the
them,
same things, but in a high
that
level.
really helps them figure out how to write it down.
Okay,
That's how they.
I heard very cool things from you guys. Sorry, I was, what do you call it?
Eavesdropping.
Here and here. But I would like for you guys to share. Which group would like to share? Should we hear from our group here? Sure, what techniques, what do you guys use? Tell us.
My mom says I've been 30 since I was 5, so I fit it in.
Here's my notes.
Thanks, Ken. See if I can read your handwriting.
So what is it that you use
So
in your writing class?
we talked about a lot of different stuff. For the first kind of thing we talked about is, like you mentioned, that writing in English is different than writing in other languages. It's much more linear, and then other languages is not quite so like straight down the line, right? So helping students to understand that that's okay in English is important, because it can feel very redundant to students, and letting them know that that's what they're supposed to be doing is helpful. We also talked about the connection between speaking and reading and writing, like speaking as in like discussing topics or going through like a writing activity in a spoken form to really help their minds focus on what they're writing, because it's easy for students' minds to just kind of wander everywhere when you just say, write a topic, right? You don't help them narrow it down to a specific enough topic to write. And then also relating it to reality, like showing them actual real life examples of writing. So like instructions on how to apply for something, instructions for directions, you know, instructions on food or whatever, to show them like real examples of writing that can help them to see like it's not just for school, like it's going to help you always. We also talked about the people who are readers tend to be better writers because they're getting a lot more input of correct English sentence structure. So if you can encourage your students to read, they will just kind of naturally become better writers. They'll get more vocab that way too. I think that was about it. We talked about a couple specific strategies to make things like manageable, put things into manageable chunks, but I don't know if you want me to talk about that.
Yeah, let's see, sure, maybe some of those will help us, or help me. I'm here to learn.
Okay, you guys, what did you do? What do you do for specific activities to help your students?
Discuss the topic so they can focus a little bit better on, because if you give them a topic, their minds have gone in 1,000 different directions, but kind of pull it in, have them give some ideas, say, okay, we're looking more at this kind of a development, this kind of, because sometimes they go out of the realm a little bit. And then I was saying that for me, especially since Zoom, but probably it's a good practice in class anyway, but just having a lot of discussion so they can get some ideas and focus before they start writing.
Very good, yeah.
And then I always make my students read their essays at the end. Because I want some accountability, because sometimes when they're on Zoom, they're sneaky.
You make sure that they did at least a couple of sentences on their paper. Anything else? Another strategy?
Yeah, I mentioned modeling. I usually do lower levels. I've always taught level 1 or 2 writing, and modeling for that level is really important. And also just a lot of times just working through the exercises and the different things that we do together as a class, so that they're part of it. So
Having them write along with you. You know, just, okay, everyone pick a topic, and then, okay, ideas for the topic sentence. You know, ideas for, like, I'm talking level 1. Okay, so you may be the best place to shop in, you know, in this area. And then just have their ideas, and then they all give their ideas, and then you just go one by one. Okay, let's make the first paragraph to support this idea that someone said. Let's do the second paragraph to support this one.
Yeah. That's a very good strategy also.
Alright, I have one more that I'll share. This might be kind of hard to see, so I don't have a whiteboard, but this is something that I do with my upper level students. It's important to remember like the different types of text that we're expecting, right? If it's level 1 or 2, they get 4 sentences that are related, that's awesome. If we're looking at 6, it needs to be more of like a full essay, right? So I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is something that I give my students where it's like a worksheet, and I'll have 3 of these, so 1 for each body paragraph, where they have to write down their topic sentence, and then I ask them to ask themselves 3 questions about that topic sentence. So, the default example topic I always use is cats are better than dogs, or excuse me, dogs are better than cats.
No.
So one of the reasons that dogs are better than cats is they play with you, right? That's often a reason students will say. So the topic sentence is, dogs are better than cats because they interact with you, they play with you. And I say, okay, ask yourself 3 questions about that. Why do they play with you? How do they play with you? And why is that better, right? So they've got some minor ideas or some supporting details kind of already started in question form. And then they change those questions into a statement and answer the statement or answer the question. And you've already got like 6 to 8 sentences in a paragraph that are all connected, and they're connected to your topic sentence. And so that kind of helps them just do it all at once. You do have to model this though. If you just hand this to them, they'll be like, what? You have to show them the steps. So writing a class paragraph together like that, I found is very helpful.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, my experienced teachers here. Now the new experienced teachers, share with us. What did you guys talk about? Any strategies that you want to share with us? what are your comments on the writing part of knowing global?
We had a lot of similar ideas. We had a few things like, I feel like our students don't grasp how important vocab is. Like vocab is just fundamental to learning a language. You can learn as much grammar as you want, but if you have no words to put into it, it doesn't matter. I think it's okay if they write an essay in words they don't know, they put in their native language, and then they go in a revision and find the translation for those words and put those in. And also like encouraging them to have notes in class that they take when they hear new words. Reading is a great way to increase your vocabulary, but a lot of times, like you said, when they try to write, the problem is they know what to say in their native language, but they just don't have their vocabulary there in English yet. So helping them understand that living in America, they always need to be like have a notebook with them at all times and just always write words they hear at the supermarket or from their roommates or anywhere. And that's the only way you're going to build the vocabulary necessary to write well in English.
Very good. Anything else? Nobody else? I know you have notes on your papers.
I just had a question for like the more experienced teacher. Like, what do you do with peer reviews and stuff? Because sometimes it's kind of like a complete like fail.
Those are hard.
Especially
When you only have one person out of 10.
Yeah, that's hard.
Did the-
I have a really structured worksheet I can send you, Kylie, where it takes students step by step and almost gives them a checklist of what to look for. So like in the introduction, do they have a hook? Do they have background? Do they have a thesis statement? So just giving them that to know what to look for can be helpful. Modeling.
Whoops. An essay is answering a question. So if you write an essay and you don't know what the question is that you're answering, you're not writing a good essay.
Oh, I didn't spell out right, but that's okay. It'll correct me. Question, what, so, a good introduction.
Part of the introduction needs to be a good hook.
Yeah, a hook.
Okay. A hook.
Logical progression of ideas.
Novel idea. Only our students.
Only university students.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Okay,
Different types.
oh, different
Yeah,
types,
different
okay.
structures, that's true.
Different discourse patterns.
Way to use the linguistic term.
Couldn't help myself.
I don't know if this fits in perfectly, but explaining why the opposite is false instead of just always
Okay.
why the thing is true.
Ooh, counter arguments, that's really important.
Counter argument, that's good.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there with this part. Okay, so this is my idea of a cheap and quick slideshow. So we're gonna go down here to, okay. Let me see, go up. I guess I was gonna go down one, but no, that's fine. Okay, so in a short sentence, what is the purpose of an introduction? I have one up here already. I know.
Tell them what you're
I
gonna
know.
know. I love it.
I know where you got that.
Okay? All right, so, that one was answered for us. I had a, there it is. That's the thing with, okay, here we go. Okay, so, what's the purpose of the body paragraphs? If tell them what you're gonna tell them is the purpose of a introduction, what's the purpose of?
Details.
Tell them.
Tell them.
Tell them, okay.
Did all
Let
of
me
our high
see.
school English teachers teach
What's
us?
behind door
Okay.
number one?
Mine certainly did.
Why, you're right. Okay, so finally then, what is the purpose of the concluding paragraph?
Tell them what you told them.
Wow. Wow, you must have been there watching over my shoulder while I was doing it. Tell them what you told them. Okay, so, if I can get back on this thing. Okay, why do you think I presented this object lesson?
To
tell us how to tell.
To tell you how to tell them. Anybody have any other ideas?
Because we don't just use it for essays.
We don't just use it for essays. What else?
Oral presentations.
Oral presentations. Okay. What if I give you this clue? And let me see if I can make this work here. Since it's not working that way, let's see if I can do it. Okay, first of all, you see a cat in a tree and a girl at the bottom. And this little thing that says, would you tell me please which one of these things we should be looking at? Which way I ought to go from here? Well, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to, said the cat. I don't much care where, said Alice. Then it doesn't matter which way you go, said the cat. So long as I get somewhere, Alice added as an explanation. Oh, you're sure to do that, said the cat, if only you walk long enough. Okay, with this in mind, what do you think the reason was for that object lesson?
Have purpose.
Have purpose? Take the first thing. Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go? Take that first sentence then.
Steer the reader in a direction.
Okay, steer the reader in a direction. Okay. All right. Let's go on here. Okay. So, after all of that, what do you think I wanted you to take away from this? Okay. Did I tell you what you were going to learn before we started this? Did I tell you what you were going to learn? So you don't know. You don't know what to focus on, right? Okay. Well, here's basically, if I can get this thing here to move. Aha! I can evaluate or reevaluate my attitudes about sharing student learning outcomes prior to teaching a topic. Okay? You just had an experience of what your students have when you present a lesson, but you don't tell them what they need to be learning. Everybody was focusing on different things, but nobody was focusing on what I wanted them to take away from this. You weren't focusing because I didn't tell you. So you had no idea. So there was no attention. And remember, we talked about attention in the last training meeting we had. Okay, so here's the thing. Instructional designers argue that learning objectives exist to provide a focused mindset for students engaging in the content. Okay? That's from the design standpoint, from the science of instruction, from how the mind works and processes things, but faculty often view learning objectives as an administrative requirement that has little impact on teaching or student performance. What do you think about this?
I think that's I have felt that way before, so I think that's a good point, that oftentimes there's a minimizing of the learning objectives.
Mm-hmm. If you're honest, most of you would say, yeah, I agree with the latter. It's there because the administration or whatever says we need to be saying these things.
I agree with both parts. If it makes you feel better, it just depends on what job I'm
Doesn't
doing.
make me feel any better either way.
I mean, I've had professors at BYU who had learning objectives, and I've always never felt like they helped me understand more. Well, it depends on the class, or it depends on how they're worded, and how the lesson is focused on them. I think a similar way is like sometimes professors will give you a question sheet that they'll go over before, and then you answer the questions as you listen, so you know what you're listening for. But I think it depends on if the objectives are well written and the lesson is well built around the objectives.
Okay. And sometimes, well, okay, let me say, in all cases, in our curriculum, the learning outcomes, the SLOs, are written at a higher level than most of our students. So what do we have to do with them? Because it goes to the point of understanding the objective to begin with, or the outcome to begin with. What do we do with them?
Explain them?
Explain them, okay. Yeah, we can explain them. What else can we do with them?
You can draw attention to them as you're teaching, so that kind of also helps explain them, because you say this activity is practicing this thing.
Okay, all right. Well, here's a question, and you're right. What we have to do is make sure that our students understand what they're supposed to be doing, and not in terms of the directions for a particular task, but what their goal is. Okay. So, what evidence, if any, is there to support that sharing written learning objectives prior to teaching a topic makes a difference? Is there any? Well, obviously, there must be, or I wouldn't ask this question. So, I'm just going to, I'm not going to dwell on this at all here, except to say, there we go. Except to say, yes, there is, and here's some. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. Okay? So, all right. So, in a nutshell, what does the research say? Well, let me move this up a little bit. Okay. Sharing learning outcomes helps students direct their attention, which is something Ashley just had mentioned a little bit ago. Helps them focus on what they are expected to learn. And it helps them to practice more deliberately in whatever form that may take. It's sharing these objectives, it's an important part of guided instruction. So if we are the guides on the side and not the sage on the stage, which we probably should be, guides on the side, then it's an important part of guided instruction. We're guiding them, okay? It helps them practice metacognition. In other words, helps them to know what they know or what they don't know. And in our curriculum now, or in our lessons now, we have a little evaluation that they can do for themselves. And if you can explain to this, because it's at the end of every activity, and the argument would be, they're not going to do that, or they'll just do what they think I want to hear. But if you can explain that the purpose of that is not for you as much as it is for them to be able to say, this is the degree to which I think I am accomplishing this particular objective, this particular outcome. And it gives them a feeling of mastery if they have fully accomplished it, or at least it helps them know where they are, and it does help you know where they are if you look at them and see, okay, I do have to review this a little bit more in the next lesson before we move on. Okay, so that's some of the what the research says. We just need to be a little creative in how we bring them up. So, I guess in a nutshell, practice going over the objectives with your students. And the first thing I would say is, you don't need to go to the course objectives, because that's a huge list. But what I would suggest is, before you teach, you go through every lesson in the in the lesson, every activity in the lesson. Also, take a quick look at the final exam and the final project, if you've got a final project. If you're in grammar, you don't have a final project, but you do have a final exam. And take a look at where those objectives fall. And in the final project, what the culmination of those, acquiring those objectives does. But while you may show them the entire set of objectives, don't go over every one of those. Just let them know, if there's a general instructional objective, like grammar may have, but sometimes the integrated skills or PEW may not have. Just say, okay, like in Grammar 1.1, the general instructional outcome is you'll be able to talk about or write about things that are happening now, or ask questions and answer questions about things that are happening now. This is our goal for this block, is to learn how to do that. Let's go to lesson 1. And in lesson 1, here are the first 2 things that we need to be able to do to be able to talk about or write about things that are happening now, or to ask and answer questions. These are the first things. And one of them is, I can identify the subject of a sentence. And then ask them what they think that means. Talk a little bit about identifying. I can, and you can actually dumb it down to, I can find the subject in a sentence. I can find the subject. And then there's also, I can use the various forms of be. And you can just say, okay, various means, many different kinds. So the verb form, the be has several different forms that we're going to know so that you can know which is which. So let's get into lesson 1. And you can start with the subject, pronouns and so forth, and even say, what do you know about a pronoun? What is a pronoun? Or any of those things. However you want to do that. But relate it to what they're going to be doing. So right now, we just need to focus on I, you, me, he, she, it, we, you, and they, and go from there. At the end of that particular part of the lesson, you can say, okay, we have kind of seen what a subject looks like. We've kind of seen what the verb be in its various forms, in its different forms looks like. Now we're going to practice. And we're going to practice in this part of the lesson. There are 2 parts. The first part, we're going to just look at, I can find the subject. So let's just concentrate on finding the subject and then going through that. When they finish that, you can see pretty quickly, because you can monitor their progress, or you can see their correct answers. How they did, and you can ask them how they did with finding the subject and the verb, because you're also, I think it's finding the verb too. Okay, and then the next part, part 2, okay, now we're going to focus on actually using them. You're going to have to write by yourself the correct form of the verb be. That's the second part. Okay. and go through that, and that's what I would say.
Ken, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So when we're going from one activity to another, because the different activities are practicing different SLOs,
Mhm.
right? And by the way, thank you to our curriculum people who are putting those in. That's a monumental project, so thank you for doing that. Do you want us like specifically saying, okay, the SLO we're practicing or the objective we're practicing for this activity is, or can we do it a little more abstractly and just like transitions? Like, okay, we just talked about finding the subject and the verb, now let's talk about
Yes.
using pronouns.
Mhm.
That's okay?
That's okay,
Okay.
because you're relating the objective, the outcome, to what they're doing.
So if the people who were in Teacher Academy remember a couple of sessions ago, we talked about transitions, right? And how to help your students like mentally transition to the next activity. That's all we're talking about. Just now we're giving them a visual transition as well with those SLOs at the top of each activity.
Right. Okay. Now, the reason, well, first, has this been helpful? Has this made some sense? Or are we still on the fence? What do you think, Andrea?
I'm not on the fence.
I'm just asking. Franklin, how about you?
I just hate that thing with my phone, even when it's like not on ring, I can still hear it. It's bothering me.
Did this make sense to you? Or?
Yeah, I think it's very important to tell the students what we are going to do that day, so
Mhm.
that way they will concentrate to achieving that goal.
Okay.
I liked your object lesson, where at the end you were like, okay, what did you take away from this? And I was like, which of the 10 things do you want me to say, right? I think that was a very like, you made your point, where if you didn't give us what to focus on, it's hard to say what you learned.
Okay. Yeah, and that's.
What about objectives?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So I knew it was objectives, but I used the stupid word purpose. But in my mind, that's what I was thinking.
Mhm.
That's not a stupid word.
It's not,
Yeah, that's
But
a fine
objective
synonym.
is a little different.
Well, you know, there's a great debate about what's an outcome and what's an objective, what's a purpose. But this is for us here, that's our definition.
You
So
guys don't have to
purpose
worry
fits.
about that debate.
So I'm going to change gears a little bit because when I was observing, and I'm going to show you some statistics from the observations, I haven't handed everybody back their observation sheets yet, but what I will tell you is on a whole, we are doing well as teachers. And there was only a couple of things that I observed, well, actually that I didn't observe in the observations, and I have to get from.
Yeah, just go back to that leftmost tab.
There we go. I just gotta get to here. Okay. So in the observations, we did a lot of things. Let me see, how do I get this smaller? I can just,
You want it zoomed out?
yeah, let me just zoom it out. There we go. Okay. Now, you may not be able to read all of this. But the,
That works? Is it
Oh,
dark?
yeah.
I thought the light just turned off by itself. I was like, what?
Glare, I wanted to get rid of that.
So
Sorry, guys.
we examined, so in the course of the observations,
I brought it down.
in the course of the observations, we looked at organization, how organized you might be in your teaching. And the average for begins and ends class on time, for example, was almost a 4. This is out of 4 points. So 3.86 is like
Nearly.
just about almost always, just about always. And then the other one was, has a written lesson plan and teaches to the lesson objectives. Now, we don't require a written lesson plan all the time, but if I'm coming to observe and you know I'm coming and I've sent you the email, it says, please give me a lesson plan. And so some people had, some people didn't have the lesson plan, but the other part is, and teaches to the lesson objectives. Now, that part, everybody does because you're almost forced to teach to the objectives because all the instruction is based on those outcomes. So that kept this score fairly high. like usually. A 3 is usually, 4 is always. Okay, presentation skills. There's not a lot to worry about here in that area. One thing I would say about establish is eye contact, which is the lowest one in here, 3.32, usually. This is because when you have online students and in-class students, the in-class students, you never miss. There's eye contact all the time. With the online students, when you're talking to them, most of the times, you're looking at the screen. So it's like me talking to you like this, while the students are seeing nothing or whatever. It would be good, if you can, to have the camera where you can look up at the camera. Because looking at the screen, you're looking right at them, and you feel like it gives you the illusion that you are making eye contact. But for the students, they're seeing this while you're talking to them. Does that make sense?
Yep. And that's hard when the cameras are over here, right? If you're like on a laptop, you can put their little pictures right under the camera, so that's a better connection for you. But when the cameras are disjointed, you have to train yourself to look at the camera and not at their faces, so that they feel like you're looking at them.
Yeah. And I found
if you talk at the screen and look at yourself as you're talking, you're like looking not at the. It looks like you're looking up at the corner or something, to what the students see.
And I found myself the other day, we were on a Zoom meeting with some developers for the TESOL-TEFL program. And my camera wasn't on my screen, on the main screen, it was on the other one. And so I was looking right at this person, talking to them, but my camera was over here, and I realized it after a couple of times, boy, she's seeing the side of my head while I'm talking to her. So,
it's hard to break that habit.
yeah, it is difficult because we like to see the talk right at the face. I don't know how news people and other television people do that. Okay, so I'm going to skip all of this other stuff and just go down to variety and pacing of instruction. This was below 3, and that is because, and this is just an artifact of when I visited your class. Because these class observations are like a photo at a certain time on a certain day, but doesn't reflect everything else that's going on around it. But the only thing I would say on this is what I saw mostly was teacher-student interaction or teacher-class interaction, but not necessarily any pair work or whatever else during that time that I was in there. And so I just had to, I just put down what I saw. And so if most of your time you're just doing teacher-class interaction, but don't give the students a chance to interact with one another, then we're missing some opportunities for student learning.
Yeah, just
Sometimes in Zoom it's difficult also.
Pardon?
With students who are online, you have one student online and the others are in person. You
Okay,
have to bring
so-
the other one into the
so-
classroom.
One teacher did it this way. She said, you go over to the camera and talk with that person.
Nice. I moved them to a break room with another one.
Yeah, that works too. Have a
Okay.
student in person join the Zoom so you can put them in a breakout room.
Yeah.
I've just left one student on the Zoom still so that student can talk with the person in person.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
options.
Because the whole class, the others were all in pairs talking, and so there was already noise in the classroom, so it didn't matter if this person was talking to a camera. But, so it can be done. Okay, but then we have, in clarity of instruction, explains and reviews lesson objectives, or can-do statements, explains and reviews. Now the reason that this is a 2 is because there are some of you who actually do that at the beginning of the entire class period, but never mention them again. Never focus the attention for each activity. So that needs to improve somewhat. Points out relevance of the content or activity to the objectives. Almost nobody did that, except for one person who usually did it. And the last one that I want to talk about here really is reviews the degree to which students achieve the objectives. Nobody. Nobody. Okay? And I'm hoping that after this today that we can improve those areas. But let's take a look at overall, everybody is above 3, which means usually.
Can you move your cursor?
Gosh.
I know, it's annoying.
Nice one, yeah.
Okay. From a high of 3.5, which means between usually and always, almost always, to 3.32, which means usually and sometimes always, if we want to look at it that way. But if you're above a 3, and everybody is, you're doing well.
So give yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah, and I was very happy and proud to see that. Clark, you had something to say, or were you just?
No, I was just moving around.
Okay, you know how teachers are.
We're done.
You see a hand movement, and it's, yes, you had something to say? Okay. Does anybody have any questions about these particular statistics? For those of you who haven't received your copy of the observation yet, it's because I'm still writing out the comments in them. But you will probably get them sometime this coming week. Okay, and that's it. Does anybody have any final questions or statements or comments? Nobody does?
Well, it's just a lot more challenging on Zoom. I feel like I've had to, just over
And
the
was
course.
this all one or the other?
Over the course of the last year or two, it's just like just totally modifying a lot of things because you've got to bring them in, it's hard, and I feel like I spend a lot of my time like, where'd she go? Where'd he go?
Yes,
What are they doing? It's like being a mama.
Sound like their mother's golden.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing that you're saying that, because this one right here invites and expects all students to participate. In every class, I saw that happening. One class, I saw that happen. The teacher invited a student who was online to participate. There was no answer. Waited another 10 seconds, no answer. Opened up the attendance sheet, marked the person absent. Right there in front of God and everybody. And
I tell you, having their face on Zoom
yes,
consistently has helped a lot because you can literally see what's going on.
But how do you know when they're lying, like, they say their camera's broken, or they'll say that they can only use the camera when they're not on Canvas, or, I don't understand technology to know who's lying to me.
The telephones, there are many telephones, and Zoom doesn't work. You can either be in Canvas or on Zoom, but you can't be both. And so they will be off camera during that time if they're using a telephone. And so you can't say that they're lying. But when they're finished with an activity, they need to exit Zoom, come back or exit Canvas, but not exit, but switch back to Zoom.
I gave someone an absent the other day, and then she came back the next day and was doing it. So, that one, you have to just.
Hi, Rose.
Well, just going off of that, what are some methods that have helped people to be able to enforce that or to get their students to do it? Because that does seem one of the biggest issues.
It's certainly an issue in the upper levels, so if you teach 5 and 6, sorry,
Yeah.
that's really where it's a problem.
Big issue, yeah.
I remind them every day, like when they first log in, I'll be like, okay, I need cameras on, I need to see your smiling faces, and then they turn the cameras on, they're like grumpy that they have to turn the camera on, and I'm like, well, I guess you don't have to be smiling, but I need to see your face. Also, a good way to check that I have used to see if they're lying to you is when you have a discussion in class, tell them, okay, no one needs to be in Canvas right now. I should see everyone's faces, we're talking. And so if they don't pop back up on Zoom, then they're probably not paying attention. Can you turn the lights back on?
Yeah. Close your eyes. There you
But and what other strategies have you guys done? Because I know those are not the only options.
I do 3 strikes, you're out. If I have to call your name a 3rd time and you don't respond, then you got.
Mhm.
I've turned all lessons, reading, writing, everything is a speaking activity.
Mm.
I've just incorporated that just to make sure they're there and more that, you know, more interaction with them. I've just had to do that since Zoom because it didn't seem that way when we were just doing it at home.
Mhm.
Okay, so when we're at home on the Zoom, they can see you straight, you can see them, and all the cameras are on. Well, at least mine were. It was coming back to class and having them be up there and me here and then 1 or 2 people in class. That has been more challenging to me than actually being on Zoom at home. But, so that's what I've been trying, so I've just, for my class, every activity is a speaking activity. I mean, besides, just because they've got to be interacting with me, otherwise I feel like they're dead, you know, so.
Now, I've noticed when, and this is gonna probably go to your comment too, Andrea. I've noticed that, because there's one part in here that talks about moving around the classroom. Well, when you have them online, you can't move around the classroom, but I noticed that there are teachers who just use the monitor this activity, and they can see whether their students are doing the work or not, they can see how they're doing. So you can see, because you can walk around and see that students are doing, or you can sit there and you can see that the 2 or 3 students you have in class are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that if they have questions, they're gonna ask you. But online, they're gonna be doing their stuff or not doing it at all. And the chances are that if they're not doing it all and they're not showing their face on camera, they're not even in the room. They could be doing other stuff and hoping that we give them credit for being there.
Yeah, I'm always watching them. I have my own computer in class and I'm always watching, and I literally call them out and say, okay, everyone's done except, are you almost finished? Or, because if I start seeing that every activity has a 0, 0, 0, like they're not moving through it, then they're absent, I know that. But I'm going back and forth with them because I'm actually reading what they're submitting.
Right, so you are moving around the class even though you may be sitting at your computer, because you can see what's going on. And when there's pair activities, well, you can go into the break rooms and so on. And so there's ways for that to be helpful. But I think the thing with this one particular teacher and just opening up the absent and just marking gaps right there, it sends a clear message. She didn't have to say a thing. She just said, so-and-so, are you there? So-and-so, I asked you a question, are you there? Okay. Opened up the screen and just click, and then went back to business. Never said another word. But I could hear, sort of, the gasps.
Showing the students that you those threats, if you want to call them that, those consequences actually have weight is important, I think, and being consistent with that.
Yes.
Right? If you're going to implement a rule, you can't. The second you get lax on that rule, they're going to take a mile. Right? You have to be consistent on that rule.
Yeah.
This week was the first time ever that I took a student off to me. I've never done that before, and then I went into a panic. Like, how do I get him back? And did I delete him forever? And, you know, like, but I just kind of wanted, like, I had a student. I love her. She's very sweet and very nice, and I write about her every week. But she's literally working during my class. She's working, and I'm like, that particular day I was in a grumpy mood, probably because what was going on with my husband, and I was
She
just
should
like,
never be marked attendance if she's working.
Yeah, no.
You cannot multitask.
So, like, I'm just like, I think sometimes as a teacher, you just feel like you're being played,
Mhm.
and once in a while, you could just get those days where you just say,
And then on that particular student, give her name to Susie, and she
oh, I
needs
have.
to be, let me finish.
This is a
though.
weekly.
She can only attend in person. I'm done with the game.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of students who are like in their car and they
Yeah.
can't do Canvas.
They cannot be driving, if they're just sitting in their car,
Or
or if they're
sitting
the
in it, the ones
passenger,
I
that's
have.
fine, but if they
Yeah.
are driving, you need to tell them, okay, get off, focus on driving, come back when you're not, cause that's super not safe.
Mhm. But they think it's okay,
Yeah, and students.
If they were in
students-
California, it's against the law.
if they're an organist.
To be on their phone at all, while they're driving, so don't accept it.
Students can sense your frustration and they get frustrated. Like in my level 7 class, I have, they're all online always, and sometimes some of them are not responsive, and I'll call on them, like we're doing a reading and everyone's taking a paragraph, and I'll call on someone and I'll wait. I'll call on someone and I'll wait, and like the other students get frustrated because like the story is like stalled, right? So the other students feel that like absence of participation, like they understand. They see that it's frustrating for the teacher, it's frustrating for them. Yeah, it's just a cultural thing that we're still learning how to be appropriate in a digital classroom.
Anything else? Not related, or related.
And I think it's okay to admit that like there just is a lack, like in a virtual learning setting, you just don't have the same dynamic. I mean, I'll admit that in my BYU online classes, I have slept through many of them. I am doing shopping while I'm in them. It's a lot harder to focus than in a classroom.
Yes.
But holding them to the standard and like showing them the consequences is, I think, the best way. But it's okay to kind of understand that like your students in class are probably getting a little bit more than the students online for a lot of different reasons.
You could always encourage them to come in person. Like if it's hard for you to understand, come in person.
Well, it is a language learning class, it's
Yeah.
not
It's better in
learning
person. Yeah.
something historical or geography or something. It really is like, you must participate, that's the whole point, you know?
And what Caleb is talking about is disconnect. And sometimes we as teachers cause that disconnect ourselves, and that's what I'm gonna close on here. I didn't plan on it. One of the things that I did notice, and one of the things I appreciated about Susie today is, when we were together in these groups discussing, Susie wasn't coming around and saying, what have you got so far? Or how are you doing with it? How's everything going? Because what does that do?
It interrupts you.
It interrupts the flow, it disengages you. So when we as teachers give instructions and the students understand everything and they're gonna start an activity, whatever it is, I observed several teachers who would halfway through the activity, how are you doing? Is everything okay? And what that does is it causes a cognitive load because they can either disregard what you're trying to say, and some of them say, what did you say, teacher? Because they're working on their stuff. And they have a choice. They can work on their stuff and disregard you, but that still is a bit of a cognitive burden for them.
But when they're not working on their stuff,
Yeah, but that's the thing is, make sure that you made your transition in a way that doesn't leave you having to go to the entire group and say, hey, because sometimes I say, oh, and by the way, don't forget this while you're doing this. Well, that just disengages everything. If you have to do that, what do you think you should do? If you have to interrupt there in the middle of something.
Prepare more next time and note it.
Okay, that is the best. What's the second
It's a good
best?
strategy.
That's the best strategy. What's the second best? What would you do?
wait till they're all done and then have them do the other part.
Okay, you could do that.
I'd stop them.
You-
I'd say, okay,
Stop
everyone,
the-
I need your
the whole
attention.
class
This is
instead of just
important.
the group.
Yeah, okay, stop the whole class, yes. And-
Yeah, I'd make sure they're not doing whatever it was and paying attention.
And you'd have to tell them, gotta see your faces, and everybody in the classroom, look up, look at me, and then say what you have to say, and then let them go back to work. There's still a price for that, and that price is the loss of focus for a time, and it will take them some time to get back into where they were. So the best thing is, as Eric said, prepare your transitions ahead of time so that you're completely certain that the...
And thank you for bringing that up, because I have done this wrong many times.
It's hard. It's a hard thing to do.
I didn't know that I was doing anything wrong.
Well, learning from experience is a really great way, and thanks for sharing that, because we all learn from experience.
Yeah.
Okay, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you guys. I say all the time that we don't hire bad teachers, and we have statistical data to prove that. So thank you for being good teachers. I really do appreciate it.
And I'm not an easy grader.
No. Ken is not just nicely giving you these grades. You earned them.
Yeah, because you can see in here, look, there's a 2, there's a 2.5. You know, there's small areas in here. And I know you're all wondering which one you are. This is ranked by age. I'm kidding, it's totally random.
So do your mental math.
It's totally random. It's so random right now that I don't know who's who at all.
So thank you. We appreciate all the work you do. I know that it can be easy to feel like when you show up at 9 or you show up at 5 and you leave at 1:20 or 9:20 and you never see admin, that we don't know what you're doing and we don't see your work, but we really do. Thank you. Like we've had, you know, the past couple of weeks, if there's an emergency or the teacher's not there, it moves less smoothly. So we really do appreciate when you guys are here and you do your jobs. It makes it easier for everybody, so thank you.
Yeah, you guys are doing great. You really are. It's impressive to see all the different things that I've seen in these observations.
So, I'm gonna tell you 3 stories, because I'm a storyteller. Now, usually when I do that with most of my staff that I meet with on a regular basis, they roll their eyes, because they hate it. This week's been a bad week for me, because I've had this horrible cold. So I wanna use this metaphorically. Every single time I have a cold, I tell myself I'm going to create a shoebox, for lack of a better word, to put all the remedies that I need when I have a cold in that shoebox. Because every time I get a cold, I forget what worked last time. Now maybe that's because I'm just old. But I know that if I'll start taking any number of different things,
I'll just give you a list and take them every day.
I do that, but I mean, to really come down on the cold, that it'll not last as long. Well, one thing I always remember, and people will argue with me if they're medical people, because they'll say, you know, if it's a virus, which a cold is, if you take an antibiotic, that's not going to help. In my case, I know, since I had pneumonia when I was 18, that I am always going to have a drop into my lungs and I'm going to need an antibiotic to get rid of it. It's going to happen no matter what. I've argued with so many doctors. Now I have a daughter who's a doctor, and I just call her and I say, call it. Which really helps, and so it's only been 5 days now instead of probably 3 weeks. And as you can hear me, probably I'm still not all the way in. Now, the lesson. I don't expect that you will always remember everything that you've learned. Every experience that you've had. Every class is different, every student is different. I had a student come to me this morning full of complaints. Do you ever observe your teachers and find out what's going on? I have great confidence in what we're trying to do. There's other issues with that student that I can see. I don't expect that you will remember everything that always worked. Because we're just human, and we don't have immediate recall. We're not computers. If you'll really try to teach to the class, I say that all the time, teach to what's going on, the answers will come that you need. The memories will come that you need. I know that. It just happens. Okay, now, with that said, teaching to the class, this is my story number 2. For 8 years, my children and I did newspapers at 2 to 4 o'clock in the morning. It's how my kids paid for their cars. For 3 of those years, I drove to Heber every day. I don't mean 5 days a week, I mean 7 days a week, 365 days a year. As I was going around the reservoir up there one day, out of the corner of my eye, I saw this deer just hightailing it across the meadow. And I was hopeful that I would not hit it. I don't know what was chasing it. I think it was a coyote, but I don't know. I kind of saw it lure off in the distance. Well, that stinking deer, and you've heard the idiom, deer in the headlights. When I hit it, it was perfectly positioned right between the 2 headlights of my car. Perfectly. Totaled that car. I was in a van. Anyway, to this day, and it's been about 20 years, I can remember that deer, just time stopped. Just before I hit it, looked at me, and it was like, kind of like, oh crap.
Or maybe hit me.
And it was instantaneous. Now, there's a reason I'm telling you that story today. You need to be aware of what's going on with your students because you're going to get a lot of deer in the headlights. If you are so concerned about getting content out, you're going to pass by that student and the deer in the headlight look is just going to persist. It's not going to change. Whose responsibility is the content?
Students.
It's the students. You're there to help, to facilitate, to teach, to mentor. But if you can't get to everything in there, it's their responsibility to go back and put a little effort in, a little time, a little elbow grease to find out what's there. So if you have to stop because you see that deer, like I did, going, I don't get it, I don't get a thing you're telling me. You teach to the one. Because some of the complaints that were happening today are, my teachers don't teach to me. Now, I also know that we've got obnoxious students that can't, they take all your time if they could. We have to balance that. But you have to make sure that you teach to the one. Now, that especially goes for new teachers. Because you will be so concerned about making sure you get all the content out. Put the responsibility back on them. It's their responsibility. You've all heard me say this. I don't know when the last time I was in Teacher Academy, but I think you guys were in it. It's not our responsibility to learn them. Open head, pour in information. No. We're to help. Okay? All the time, and I've only got, I've got a couple of staff in here. One of the words I use often about things that we do within the organization is I say get granular. Break it down into small enough pieces that you can actually consume it. Okay? So for example, if it's you and you're teaching a math concept, and we know that the people in GMAT or GRE have to take math as part of their tests, and they're timed, they need a formula, fairly simple, to just get it done.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily know everything that his PhDs have taught him.
Right.
We're waiting for him to come up with the,
Master's degree.
I give you a PhD effort all the time. I do, actually.
He does, yeah.
I always do, because I feel you're at that level.
Okay.
He's going to solve the questions to the universe. But the students don't need to. Story number 3. All of you know that within my religious affiliation, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I work at the jail. My branch president out there used to be a professor at BYU. I would have absolutely hated him as a teacher. I am convinced it would have been misery. So I met with the kid the other day. We go out and we do interviews on Tuesday nights, and I met with him and he said, I met with the branch president and I made this statement to him. I've never been religious and I'd like to know more about the Bible. Okay, now you don't have to be Mormon, Catholic, Presbyterian, I don't care. The concept works. When you say that to my branch president, in the next hour and a half, he will go through 4,000 years of history. Every war, every geographical designation.
Bible's a mess historically.
I can absolutely tell you that that kid at the end of that hour and a half was a deer in the headlights. Absolutely guarantee it. Now, when my branch president came to our meeting, he reported to us how excited this kid was to have an overview of the Bible. And I've seen him do this multiple times. What was the kid really asking? Now, this goes back to what Ken's talking about with objectives. The kids may be asking one thing, and what you want them to know is how much you know. So you vomit up all of your knowledge on this poor individual. And it really is a regurgitation. Seek for clarity. Find out what they're really asking. And granularly answer that. And then, what Ken's also talking about, is then give them the ability to understand how it applies. Now, I'm a BYU alumni. I've told you this before, I did not finish. I left as a second semester senior. Not very smart, but it's what I did back in 1980. I found a girl, got a new career, had a business, owned a home, moved on. Now, I was in business. Business in 1980 was, let's train you how to be a junior exec and stick you at a desk for 25 years, and at the end of that time, you might move up. Now, the Marriott School of Management teaches start your own business, create a company, entrepreneurship, these kind of things. I sat in class after class after class at BYU and never understood a thing about what they were really trying to tell me, because I was just getting vomited on, and I don't really like that. Even when my grandkids do it, I don't really like it. Until I started my own business and I found application. Then I could see, oh, that's what they were trying to tell me. But I will tell you, I don't think I had a teacher at BYU in business at that time that helped me with how to apply what they were giving me and how I would apply it in the future.
That's how it was in the 70s.
It was.
There was no thing to.
You know, you young kids, it's a different world. High schools are different. Now you have tracks that you can go on kind of based on what you want to become. We only have one track. This is what you got to do. And if you don't do this,
They just lectured and
they just passed you on.
didn't have, no, for ESL, they never talked about how to apply it.
No. So I want you to make sure that you stop, give application, and maybe that day in that 2-hour integrated skills class, they only get one concept and how to apply it. They'll get the rest. It'll come. It really will. If you can get 5 out, more power to you. But don't just pass on. I can tell you with my branch president that during that 2-hour time or hour and a half or whatever he was doing to this kid, he never once asked him a question. I'm positive because I've seen him in action. All he wanted to do was let him know how much he knew. And he knows a lot. He said to us the other day, I had an opportunity to study the Old Testament, and I decided I wanted to memorize every name in the Old Testament and how it applies. Now, if it's a Moses or an Abraham, those are easy. But he found every name. And then he wants to tell you about them. Some of them barely mentioned. I don't even know why they're there.
He stayed married.
But for him, it's knowledge he has that he thinks everybody should have. But there's no application for that. When I deal with a murderer, and I do, or somebody who's assaulted, and I work in Max. Do you know what they want to hear from me? Not names. Overall, I'm not even talking religion. They just want to know, is there hope for me going forward? That's all. And then if I can use a story or from my own life or whatever, that's what I used. But they could care less about names over 4,000 years. You need to be careful with your students because they could care less too if you don't give them application. Or if they feel like you're just regurgitating what you know. That's not teaching. Now, I was really excited a couple of days ago when Ken gave me results of our observations. That's what I want to hear. If he would have told me you were all 4s, I would have fired him.
I'd be going out on all 4s.
But that would be a bad thing. I mean, our students, most of you know that we're teaching in Suriname online. And we had them give us a student survey at the end of the first group. And my staff on the sales side were frustrated because they gave us all 4s instead of 5s. Because a lot of our competitors get nothing but straight 5s. That's the only thing they put up, and they pay for them or whatever, I don't know. I would rather have an honest 4 saying there's room for improvement and that we can continuously improve on than just saying, oh, they're great. Student said to me, when you take a student survey, they're afraid to tell you the truth. So they'll just give everybody 5s. We worked really, really hard on our last survey to see if we could make it so they could just answer it honestly and we'd get a real representation of what happens. Okay? Do a lot of these things. I echo what Ashley said. I appreciate what you do. I don't get around very much. I don't get out of my desk. It's an insane thing. I was late coming in Tuesday. I didn't feel good. I opened the door. They have antennae. And it's like, you just would laugh because they just.
No, we literally say, take a number, you're next in line.
It's just, it's insane. And I haven't got anything of value to say to them. I don't know why they come. I do try to get around most of the time, a couple of times a week, just to check in with you. If you need something, please stop me. Make an appointment, come see me. I really am not usually gone for lunch. I just am there. So I'm there. Ken's available, Ashley's there, Caleb's there. I do feel, and I will report this to you, I feel like the students are getting better. I don't know how you guys feel. It seems like I've got fewer and fewer that are really bad numbers. In the last 2 months, we terminated 10. Just disappeared, done, not playing the game anymore. But I don't have another 50 behind them. There's a lot we're working on that are not getting there, but there seems to be an incremental increase in everything. And for one of the good sides, even payment. People are being more consistent in that, and we fought that, Andrea knows, forever. So, thanks so much. In the culinary room, whatever we call that thing.
Break room.
The break room.
There's pop and pizza.
Oh, yeah.
So enjoy lunch and thanks, and we'll see you next time.